Thank you so much, Thea, for that really flattering and mildly embarrassing introduction. And thank you, Variety, for celebrating this incredible group of honorees. It's a privilege to be in a room full of people who are using their platforms to highlight such important causes near and dear to them. I am personally here to talk about a shocking health inequality that affects millions of people, yet remains largely invisible. In Hollywood, that's usually a superpower. In healthcare, it's a problem. It's also my story and the reason I founded my charity, Same You. This is the fact. 1 in 3 people will suffer a brain injury at some point in their lives. And if you survive your brain trauma, you might expect to be cured and get back to life as normal, but you would be wrong. We have a universal crisis when it comes to brain injury aftercare. The combined number of people currently living with the life-changing consequences of stroke and traumatic brain injury in the UK and the US is more than 15 million people alone. Yet our healthcare systems still don't have a clear way out of this crisis or the ability to help those in need. That is why with my mum, Jenny, hi Jenny, we founded Same You, because finding the essential support you need to return to life is often a lottery, a social inequality that rarely gets any airtime, let alone focus and funding. It is one of the biggest gaps in health and social care systems wherever you live. I was 22 when I suffered my first brain hemorrhage, 24 when I had my second. I was also 22 when I filmed the first season of Game of Thrones, and 24 when I made my Broadway debut. I'd like to blame my brain hemorrhage for the bad reviews, but it happened after we'd closed early. 15 years after my first bleed, I have the hindsight to see how difficult that time truly was. I never had the chance to reflect on what my 2 brain traumas had done to me because I could walk, talk, be myself, remember my lines, and was back on camera within weeks of both brain injuries. I was fine, right? I ignored what was going on with my hormones, or rather my lack of them, my extreme fatigue that no one else I knew in their 20s suffered. What about my anxiety? Surely that is normal working in our image-obsessed industry. Breaking a rib after filming a sex scene? Well, maybe that was his fault. But sometimes even blacking out after long night shoots, the pain all over my body, I didn't even think I should find out why. I just put it down as stress and my non-stop work schedule that I wasn't too good at coping with. I thought I had been fixed. So did my doctors. None of us could see the pattern, so I just blamed myself. It never occurred to me that maybe the problem wasn't me, that it was because brain injury is extraordinarily complex, and we're still only beginning to understand the impact it can have long after you've supposedly recovered. What usually happens when you're rushed to hospital with a brain injury is that doctors do everything possible to save your life. They stop the bleeding, remove the clot, find the source, cut it out, stitch you up and send you home. But what many people don't realize is that whatever symptoms remain, physical, cognitive, emotional, linguistic, the consequence is unresolved trauma. And there are simply too few neuropsychologists and specialist rehabilitation services for that reality to change without a major shift in priorities. When everyone around you thinks you look fine, they treat you as though you are. Eventually, you start believing you should be too. I often compare brain injury today to where cancer was a century ago. Misunderstood, stigmatized, and hidden from view. When rehabilitation is available, it's usually measured in weeks rather than years and focused only the most visible symptoms. Brain injury recovery is still in its infancy, leading to lost potential, lost livelihoods, and too many people falling through the cracks. At SameU, our mission is to help rethink recovery. In 2011, I didn't want anyone to know about my brain bleeds. I was ashamed and overwhelmed by a diagnosis I didn't understand. We didn't even tell HBO until we knew I wasn't going to die, which in TV terms is usually when they kill you off anyway. After my second hemorrhage in 2013, I started to think that perhaps speaking publicly might help, but it still took me years for me to grapple with my truth. When I finally shared my story in 2019, we were overwhelmed by the response. Mostly young people reached out to tell us their stories. And today we have tens of thousands of survivors in our community saying essentially the same thing. The journey to healing feels like falling off the edge of a cliff without anyone there to catch you. I knew I had to do something. It started with buying a new sofa for the family room in the hospital's ICU. Then it became supporting the nurses who held my hand, cleaned my body, and talked to me while I tried to understand what was happening. Then I started imagining what recovery would look like if I hadn't had my family, if I hadn't been financially stable, if I hadn't had a job that was willing to wait for me. Eventually all that became SameU. Recovery is every bit as important as survival. People need guidance. They need answers. They need support, physically and mentally. Because when you think about who you are, your personality, your intellect, your humor, your memories, your excellent taste, where do they live? Your mind. And when that fails you, it can shake your trust in yourself. It can leave you frightened and convinced that you will never be who you were again. But we know that the recovery to yourself is possible, hence the name, SameU. I've recently been on my own very belated recovery journey, 15 years after my first brain bleed. Through the guidance and help of the extraordinary David Petrino at Mount Sinai in New York, I now have the energy and positivity I had in my 20s. This was a journey, not a miracle cure. 1 in 3 of us will suffer a brain injury in our lifetime. It's an awful lot of people living with life-changing consequences. So if it happens to you or someone you love, they deserve a way forward. Thank you for giving me this platform to tell my story. Thank you to the tens of thousands of SameU survivors who continue to inspire us every day. And thank you so much for listening.